She stole my story, destroyed my name, and vanished into the shadows of London. I thought it was over, until a letter arrived. Lavender, smoke, and her handwriting. It contained just one sentence. "Let's write together." And that's when I knew our story wasn't finished. My name is Eliza Hart, and I am 24 years old. I grew up in a little English seaside town where the gulls argued over chips, and the wind smelled of salt and second chances. I thought trust was as simple as passing the ball in football. You kick, your friend receives, everyone cheers. Then I moved to London, where people juggle knives and call it collaboration. This is the story of how I learned what trust costs, how it breaks, how it's traded, how it hunts you in silence after midnight, and how I decided whether to rebuild it or burn it to ash. One hooked. The first time I saw Nina Fox, she was framed by neon pink light and 20,000 hearts floating up a phone screen. "If you can dream it," she told the camera, "you can edit it." She'd built a channel teaching storytelling and videocraft, and it wasn't just tutorials. She tested cameras in the rain, wrote short films in cafes, staged arguments with herself, and then revealed the trick cut. She was chaos with ring light eyes, and I was spellbound. I was fresh out of uni with a degree in English and a folder of poems that made baristas smile politely. When Nina announced a contest, "Pitch me a series, win a 6-month paid collaboration," I filmed my idea on a borrowed DSLR with the lens taped in place. "London Understory," I said to the camera. "Real people, hidden stories. 5-minute films. No heroes, just choices. We'll meet a florist who writes breakup notes for clients. A tube driver who sings to the tunnels. A locksmith who only opens doors if you answer a riddle." I spoke too fast. My hair wouldn't behave. But the idea felt alive. 2 weeks later Nina DM'd me. "Let's talk." By talk, she meant 3 hours in a Peckham studio where the walls were pegboards of lenses and the air smelled of coffee and ambition. She listened like a storm cloud listens to a field, charged, waiting to strike. "This is good," she said finally. "The trick will be trust. People don't give you secrets for free." "I know," I said. "That's why I want it to be slow. 1 episode a week, recurring characters, we earn it." Her smile came sharp. "We'll earn it faster." I should have been afraid then, but I was 24 and starving for proof that my ideas mattered. We shook hands. "The contract would come later," she said. "And Eliza? Welcome to the show." To the first door. Tuesdays became our ritual. We met at dawn, loaded cameras into a tiny hatchback that rattled like a box of coins, and chased stories across the city. The first episode featured Fahim, a night bus driver who collected passengers' forgotten playlists and built a midnight radio from them. He let me ride beside him for a week before he spoke on camera. "You listen before you ask," he said. "That's rare." When the video went live, the comments stunned me. People heard themselves in Fahim's quiet voice. A woman said she'd taken his bus after a rough night and thought she'd imagined the music. Now she knew it was a real kindness. Nina clipped his best quotes for shorts. The view count leaped like a pulse. The second episode took us to a market where a stall sold buttons that didn't match, each one a small history. The third episode belonged to a locksmith named Ruth who'd limped through the Blitz as a child and had since collected keys like charms. We worked long days and edited longer nights. It wasn't glamorous. We ate cold noodles from cartons and argued about music cuts, but every time we hit publish, we felt the city answer. 6 figures by summer, Nina predicted. And sponsors will beg. "Only if we guard the people," I said. "No clickbait titles that turn them into circus acts." "Guard them, sure," she said, waving me off. "But tell the truth loud." I didn't yet understand that to Nina, loud and true were synonyms. To me, loud had teeth. 3 the lock. A month in, I asked Ruth if she'd show me the oldest safe she'd ever opened. She led us into a back room where dust made its own weather and put her palm against a polished door. "Trust is a hinge," she said. "Rust eats it if you don't move it, but a hinge without a door is just metal." Nina filmed in close. You could see Ruth's entire life in the tremble of her fingers. In the edit, I kept her pauses. The internet cried. Our channel passed 100K subs on a Sunday afternoon, while I was stirring soup. Nina brought champagne. We toasted on milk crates. "Next," she said, "we need edge. Something that makes them argue in comments. Something that scares you a little." "It's not about fear," I said. "It's about attention," she said. "And attention pays for rent." She wasn't wrong. I'd run the numbers. I'd also seen what chasing attention could cost. The next morning, she sent an address and a single line, "Meet me at midnight. Trust me." For the secret room. The address belonged to a bookshop that had been dying for 20 years but refused to admit it. At midnight the shutters remained down. Yet a back door cracked open like a yawn. Inside, fairy lights traced a path through towers of books to a trapdoor with iron loops. "After you," Nina said. "I don't do basements with vague instructions," I said. "You do if there's a story." She grinned and dangled a key like bait. "Remember you wanted hidden London." Below, The room smelled of paper and damp stone. At a long table sat 4 people. A taxidermist with a hawk's stare. A nurse whose laugh was a bandage. A graffiti artist who wore silence like a jacket. And an older man in a tweed coat. They were the Understory Club, a circle that met monthly to swap secrets and favors. Anonymous but for first names and masks that hid their eyes. Tonight, they'd let us film if we promised never to reveal the shop or their faces. How did you even find them? I whispered. Nina's smile didn't reach her eyes. You're not the only one who listens. The meeting held me like a spell. People told truths they'd kept for years. Forgivenesses they owed. Lies that had calcified into habits. We filmed from shadows. Voices pitched low. When the older man confessed he'd been the anonymous donor who'd saved the bookshop 3 times, the crowd hummed like a hive. Back in the studio, we argued over what to include. I cut the names, the identifying ticks, the details that would make a clever viewer play detective. Nina pushed for more. Blur the faces, yes, but keep the twist, she said. We need the part where the nurse admits she swapped medication labels to protect a patient from an abusive husband. She didn't say abusive, I said. She didn't have to. It could cost her job. Nina sighed as if I were refusing her a harmless treat. We can change the voice. No one will know. I'll know. Our compromise cut the confession but kept the emotion. The video soared anyway, not because it was scandalous, but because it was intimate. People in the comments posted their own secrets hidden between emojis and jokes. Someone wrote, I haven't told anyone I'm leaving him. Maybe this is my way of saying it out loud. I went to bed wired and troubled. The next morning, the nurse called me. I thought I could carry that story, she said. But I can't. Please take the video down. I promised I would talk to Nina and call her back. When I reached the studio, Nina sat with a brand manager on speaker. YouTube loves this, the brand voice boomed. We're thinking a long-term partnership. Is the nurse available for a follow-up? I shook my head. She wants it down. Absolutely not, Nina said simultaneously. I stared at her. She trusted us. She gave consent on camera, Nina said. We all heard it. In a basement at midnight with fairy lights and wine, I said. That's not consent, that's theater. The brand voice cleared his throat. Should I hop off? Nina kept him. She always kept anyone with money within earshot. We'll handle it, she said and muted the call. Eliza, if we take the video down, we look unreliable. We'll never get access like that again. Good, I said. Maybe we shouldn't. What happened to earn it slow? I meant earn, not harvest. We stared at each other like duelists measuring distance. Then she softened, the way she did when she sensed she'd pushed too far too fast. Give me 24 hours, she said. Let me call her. I went home, called the nurse, and promised again. 5 the cut. The video stayed up. Not only that, a new version appeared 2 days later. Understory Club. The confession we cut. It included everything we'd argued about. Remixed with dramatic music. The nurse's voice shifted only half a tone. Enough for plausible deniability, not enough for comfort. The brand had sponsored the upload. The thumbnail was cruelly thrilling. I didn't even knock. I stormed Nina's studio and threw open the edit suite door. What have you done? Nina didn't flinch. I made the best cut for the channel, she begged. I negotiated. She agreed to let it stay for a month in exchange for us featuring her charity link. You negotiated with a woman who was shaking. I negotiate with the internet every day, Nina said. This is the job. No. The job is to tell the truth without breaking people. She leaned back, expression unreadable. You're acting like you didn't benefit. Your name is on this channel. You cashed the check. I tasted bile. You put my name on a lie. On a story, she said softly, which is always a shaped truth. When I left, I took my hard drives with me. I told myself I would quit, but quitting is an action. I lived in a passive tense. I watched our comments fracture, half cheering, half furious. I watched the nurse's charity link crawl with anxious donations. I watched the numbers climb like a fever that refused to break. At 3 in the morning, the nurse called again. He knows, she whispered. Who? My husband. The line went dead. 6 fallout. We learned the details in shards. The police called the bookshop owner, who called Ruth, who called me. No one said assault. They said incident, altercation, disturbance, temporary housing. The nurse was safe, but her life had cracked. I went to the studio, waited for Nina in the stairwell, and intercepted her with a question I already knew the answer to. Are you proud? I'm successful, she said. It's not the same thing. It is on YouTube. The laughter in her voice was smaller than usual, as if it had been folded in half. She shoved past me and locked the edit suite. I stood with my forehead to the door until my phone buzzed. It was the older man from the Understory Club, the donor with the tweed coat. We need to meet, he said. Now. We returned to the basement, but it felt smaller, the fairy lights too bright. The graffiti artist paced. The taxidermist's hawk eyes flashed. The donor looked at me like a teacher who sadly knows a pupil will fail. You promised, he said. I know. You promised we could speak without being made content. I know. You broke faith. I know, I said again and hated the threadbare sound of it. We could sue you, the taxidermist said. We could ruin your channel. Do it, the graffiti artist said. Let's burn the stage. I swallowed. It's not my channel. Then it will be your apology, the donor said. You will fix this. I don't control the uploads. She used your footage, he replied. And your trust. It was true. I had brought them under the camera because I believed in stories told face to face. I had introduced Nina to their secrets. I had held the door open. My name might not own the channel, but it had been stamped on their faith. The floor felt like water. What do you want me to do? Tell the truth, he said. Loud. 7 going live. I posted a video that night from my flat, lit by a lamp with a crooked shade. I looked like I'd been crying because I had. My name is Eliza Hart, I said. And I'm about to lose a career I haven't even earned properly yet. I told our audience what we'd done, what I had done, in the name of views. I told them about consent that sounds like consent but isn't, about the speed of attention versus the slowness of consequences. I told them the nurse was safe and that we'd set up a fund, not for clicks, not for optics, but because harm requires repair. I didn't mention Nina by name. I didn't have to. YouTube is a room with walls made of whispers. The video trended anyway. Within 24 hours, the brand withdrew. The confession upload came down, replaced by a glossy apology that said everything and meant nothing. The Understory Club shut its trapdoor. We lost subscriptions like leaves in wind. Nina texted, Kumain. Now. The studio felt smaller too. She stood at the whiteboard. Timeline crossed out like a murder scene. You tanked us, she said. I told the truth. You made it about you. It was about me, I said, voice breaking. I was the hinge. She stared, then laughed once, the sound empty as a tin. You want ownership? Fine. She pulled a folder from a drawer and slid it across the table. The contract. I never sent it because I thought we were beyond paperwork. Congratulations, you were a contributor. You own nothing. The word thudded. I picked up the folder with fingers that didn't feel like mine. You used me, I said. You used me, she shot back. You used my stage to make yourself a saint. We were both right in the most poisonous way. I left without the folder. It was a trap either way. Ate the quiet. There is a kind of silence that only cities know. After the sirens, before the comeback. I hid in it. I turned off notifications, deleted the shortcuts to my analytics apps, and waited for my skin to grow back. A week in, I walked to the canal because water reminds me of timelines. Always forward, always toward a mouth. I sat on a bench with my hands inside my sleeves like a child, and cried for no particular reason. A woman sat down beside me. She wore an NHS fleece and a face that had learned to hold itself together. For a terrifying heartbeat, I thought it was the nurse. It wasn't. But she looked at me like she knew my shape anyway. "You're the girl from the videos," she said. I said. "They helped me," she said simply. I watched the bus driver one on my break at 3 in the morning, and decided to keep going. And when you messed up, I watched that, too. And decided to forgive someone because I saw you trying. I turned to her. "We hurt people." She nodded. Sometimes the apology is the only medicine available. We sat in a kind of small peace. Before she left, she squeezed my shoulder like a password and said, "Make more. Make it better." I walked home thinking of Ruth's hinge. 9 open letters. I wrote an open letter to our audience. It wasn't an apology video with piano music and edits every 4 seconds. It was a column of words on a plain site with a donate button, and a list of what we'd do next. I promised 3 things. 1. Every subject would watch their episode before it went live, with veto power for anything that made them unsafe. 2. Every sponsor would sign an ethics clause. 3. I would never again use a secret I hadn't earned, even if I could blur it into a ghost. I hit publish. Then I waited to be told to grow up. Instead, emails arrived. Hundreds. A barista who wrote letters for strangers. A ballroom teacher who coached apologies. A woman who ran a shelter for people who had fled their own stories. The city whispered back, as if it had been waiting for someone to listen again. Among the messages, one from Nina. "Coffee? Neutral ground." I met her in a cafe in King's Cross where the tables were tiny, and the conversations felt too close. She looked tired in a way makeup can't fix. "Truce," she said, lifting empty hands. "For what?" I asked. "For the thing you started without me," she said. "You're good on camera. Your confession was perfect. Honest, shaky, righteous but not smug. If you're going to make a second channel, do it with someone who knows how to keep trolls from eating you." "I'm not making a second channel," I said. "Then what?" "A smaller one," I said. "A slower one." She laughed softly. "That won't pay." I'll figure it out. Or you could come back, she said. We do it my way, but Kinder. I've learned too. Have you? I asked. She looked at me then like a cliff considers a climber, deciding whether to break. I have learned, she said, that trust is a currency I spent like it was infinite. I am adjusting. It wasn't the apology I wanted, but it was a start. Still, I knew what returning would mean. Forever negotiating ethics with a person who believed truth should always be loudest. I wanted truth like water, quiet, steady, wearing a channel through stone. I can't, I said. She nodded once a cut. Then good luck, Eliza. You too, I said, and meant it in the smallest way. Tend the new door. I called Ruth. Would you help me design a key? For which door? She asked. The one between story and consent. She laughed, a sound like a match. I have just the brass. We turned my open letter into a manifesto and a process. We built forms with human language. We created a red folder for every subject. If they placed a word inside it at any point, that word never saw the light. We wrote a rule. If a story might cost someone their safety, it wasn't our story to tell. I filmed again more carefully. The first video of the new channel was small. A night porter who curated the lobby music to match the weather. A quiet craft you'd never notice unless you noticed everything. He watched the rough cut at my flat, drank tea from a chipped mug, and asked me to mute one line where he'd teased a coworker. She'll blush, he said. She doesn't like the internet. We cut it. The video did modest numbers and made me ridiculously proud. The second video brought me back to the bookshop. The owner met me on the pavement. If you're here for spectacle, he said, the trapdoors sealed. I'm here for repair, I said, and to ask how you are. He studied me, then stepped aside. One interview. Off camera first. We talked in the basement without the fairy lights. He told me what the understory club had taught him. That privacy isn't secrecy, that some stories grow better underground. When we filmed, we focused on his shop's quiet resilience. Notes slipped into books, free tea for cold hands, space for students to read poetry out loud and shake. He watched the edit and approved. We posted. The comments were smaller but kinder. Someone wrote, I went today. The owner recommended a book, as if he remembered me from a dream. The algorithm didn't shower us with love, but the shop got busy. Sometimes usefulness is the only applause you need. 11 Nina's cut. 3 months passed. I'd learned to live with fewer views and better sleep when a video from Nina's channel landed in my recommendations. The Girl Who Left. My stomach clenched. I clicked. Nina sat alone against a black backdrop. She didn't cry. She didn't exclaim. She talked about ambition like a drug and trust like a glass. About how you don't notice the cracks until you tilt the glass, and the light turns them into maps. She admitted the basement video had been wrong. She said my name aloud, thanked me for forcing the break, and promised to tithe from her next series to the nurses' charity. She didn't ask me to come back. It was an apology without recruitment. The comments were war. Some called her manipulative. Some called her brave. She didn't reply to any of them. I watched to the end. The last line was a quiet blade. Attention, she said, is not love. We owe people love. I closed my laptop and cried for the version of us that might have made great work together without breaking anything we couldn't mend. Then I made tea and emailed the nurse. How are you? I wrote. She replied an hour later. Better. I start in a new ward next week. Thank you for the fund. It helped. And for what it's worth, I watched your latest. Keep doing it slow. There was a heart emoji. It felt like a bandage that breathes. 12. The knife and the thread. You might expect a grand ending where I choose between two doors and music swells. Life is more stitching than cutting. I kept making small films. Ruth taught me to pick locks as a metaphor, then scolded me for turning everything into metaphors. The bus driver invited me to play my own song on a midnight route, and the passengers clapped like we were a family forgetting our arguments. The bookshop survived another winter. Sometimes I saw Nina across the internet the way you see an X across a crowded bar. Recognition sparking, but the room between you full of good reasons. She made a new series about young filmmakers and put consent contracts on screen like recipes. We'd met occasionally, a link, a joke, a gentle truce made of separate paths. Trust, I learned, is not repaired with one act but with many small ones, until the crack is part of the design, and you can run your fingers along it without bleeding. I didn't become a saint. I still loved views. The rush of a comment that said, I felt this in my bones. I learned to love the comments that said simply, thank you, even more. One night, months later, where this all began, I returned to the canal. The bench was empty. The water carried a slow parade of leaves. My phone buzzed with a notification I didn't check. I sat with my own breathing and thought of the hinge Ruth praised. Trust opens. Trust closes. It needs oil, not fireworks. A man approached hesitantly. Are you Eliza? He asked. I am, I said. I have a story, he said. But I don't know if I want to tell it. That's all right, I said. We can talk without the camera. We did. An hour later, he asked if I would mind him telling it himself and sending me the footage. I said I would be honored to help him edit, and that I would only publish it if he woke up the next morning and still felt brave. Why wait? He asked. Because night makes everything louder, I said. Morning knows which parts are true. He laughed, surprised. That's good, he said. Did you think of that? Yes, I said. After learning it the worst way. He came back the next day with a memory card and clear eyes. We edited together at my kitchen table. We cut the line that made his sister look careless. We added a shot of the road outside his childhood home where the pavement had a crack shaped like a map. He left with a copy and promised to message me if he changed his mind. He didn't. The video didn't explode. It glowed. It found who needed it. 13. Epilogue for anyone watching at 2 a.m. If you're watching this on a screen at 2 a.m., if you've scrolled until your eyes burn and your heart feels cheap, here's the part one wish I'd been told. Storytelling is a promise. Not a spell, not a weapon, not a ladder. Though it can be all those things. A promise. I will hold the fragile part of you carefully and return it unharmed. I will not trade your softest facts for my loudest applause. I will check again in the morning. My name is Eliza Hart, and I am 24 years old. I believed attention was proof that I mattered. Then I learned that mattering is quieter, heavier, and slower. Trust can be rebuilt. It sounds like the click of a small lock in a hand that does not rush. It tastes like tea gone lukewarm because you were listening too closely to drink it. It looks like a timeline with fewer spikes and more steady lines. It is worth the work. If you want more stories, you know where to find me. Not where the noise is highest. Where the door is slightly open and a hinge moves without complaint. Come in when you're ready. I'll be here, camera down, kettle on. She stole my story, destroyed my name, and vanished into the shadows of London. I thought it was over, until a letter arrived. Lavender, smoke, and her handwriting. It contained just one sentence. Let's write together. And that's when I knew our story wasn't finished. But tell me, if someone shattered your trust, would you ever work with them again?